Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Midnight Murmurs, where dreams melt into shadows and stories float through your sleep. Videos to fall asleep. So before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment, letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying. Tonight's tale, The Mirror Knows My Name. Let's begin. The room at the end of the hall. There were only two rules in the Whitmore orphanage. 1. Don't go out after lights out. 2. Never enter the room at the end of the east wing. Most kids broke the first rule at least once. The second one? That was different. Nobody ever got close enough to break it, not even the bullies. Elena had been at Whitmore for 6 months. She didn't speak much. Quiet, observant. The kind of girl who watched the rain slide down windows and traced patterns in dust on old shelves. At 16, she had learned not to ask too many questions. Questions got you strange looks or, worse, answers. But the room at the end of the hall, it pulled at her. She first noticed it in passing. A door without a number, unlike the rest. Its paint was darker, almost blackened at the corners, like it had burned and healed. It had a keyhole that didn't belong to any modern lock she'd seen. A whispery draft leaked out from beneath it, even when the rest of the hallway was still and warm. One evening, just after lights out, she heard her name. Not yelled, not whispered, but spoken, softly, clearly, from the other side of that door. Aeliana. She sat up in bed. The other girls in the dormitory were asleep, breathing in rhythm, but the voice had been real, as if it had been inside her ear. Aeliana. This time it felt like it came from inside her chest. Her bones seemed to hum. She got up slowly, bare feet against the creaking floor. Every step toward the east wing felt like a memory she didn't have. The hallway seemed longer at night, stretched and hollow. That door, unmarked and strange, waited. As she stood in front of it, something odd happened. The air thickened, like the world behind her slowed down. And then she saw it, her reflection, not in the door, but in the keyhole. A tiny, distorted version of her own face, staring back at her. Aeliana, it said again, but this time her lips moved too. She stumbled back, heart pounding. Her own voice had spoken, but she hadn't meant to. Behind her, the hallway was empty. She should have run, told someone, woken the headmistress. But instead, she reached for the doorknob. It was warm. The voice that knows me. Elena's fingers hovered over the doorknob. It wasn't just warm, it pulsed, faintly, like it had a heartbeat. As if the door itself was alive and waiting. She turned it slowly. A click echoed down the hall, sharp and deliberate. The door creaked open just an inch, and immediately the whispering stopped. Dead silence. No wind. No sounds from the dorms. Not even the old pipes ticking behind the walls. She pushed the door wider and stepped inside. The room was drenched in darkness. Not the normal kind, but thick, velvety shadows that clung to her skin. The air smelled faintly of lavender and rust. Dust danced in her breath like smoke. There was only one object in the center of the room, an old mirror, 7 feet tall, framed in ornate black metal, twisted into thorns and vines. Its surface wasn't reflective, at least not at first. It shimmered like water frozen mid-ripple, refusing to show her face. She approached cautiously. Aeliana. This time the voice came from inside the mirror. She stopped. I'm not afraid of you, she whispered aloud. Her voice trembled, betraying the lie. The mirror flickered. Then it showed her reflection. But something was off. The Aeliana in the mirror smiled back. Not a comforting smile, a knowing one. like she had a secret, like she had seen things Elena hadn't. I know your name, it said. I know the names they've taken from you. Elena stepped closer, heart pounding. What do you mean? The mirror version of her tilted its head. Do you remember your first dream here? The one with the staircase and the blackbird? Elena froze. She had dreamt that, but she had never told anyone. The mirror smiled wider. I remember everything you've forgotten. Every night you've ever screamed without sound. Every truth they buried in the walls. The room suddenly felt too small. The air, thick with memory. What do you want? She whispered. The reflection leaned in, face nearly pressed against the glass. To wake you up. Then crack. A thin, jagged fracture split across the top corner of the mirror. Just one. But Elena felt it deep in her chest, like something inside her had cracked too. She stumbled back. The room flickered like a faulty bulb. When she looked again, the mirror was blank. No reflection, no whispering, just glass. And behind her, the door clicked shut on its own. The cracks beneath the surface. Elena didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The crack in the mirror burned into her memory. It hadn't just broken, it had responded. To her fear. By morning, everything looked the same at Whitmore. Gray sky, cold oatmeal, the smell of bleach lingering in the halls. But Elena felt like something inside the building had changed. Or maybe she had. The other kids avoided her that day, more than usual. Not out of cruelty, but like they sensed something unfamiliar in her. Like a dog backing away from a storm you can't hear yet. At lunch, she sat alone, until Agnes sat down across from her. She was one of the younger ones, barely 13, small, quiet, pale as chalk. I saw you, Agnes said, eyes wide and steady. Elena blinked. What? Last night, in the hall. You went into that room. Elena's throat tightened. How? Agnes glanced around, then leaned in. I see things sometimes, before they happen, or while they're happening to someone else. You weren't alone in that room. Elena felt a chill travel down her spine. There's something in the mirror, Agnes said. It talks to people, tells them things they forgot, things they shouldn't know. Some kids used to go in there a long time ago. Elena leaned closer. What happened to them? Agnes paused. They stopped being themselves, started repeating things in their sleep, standing in front of mirrors too long. One girl tried to scratch her own name into the floor with her fingernails. Another, she hesitated. Another disappeared. They said she ran away, but her shoes were still under her bed. Elena's fingers tightened around her spoon. Agnes nodded slowly, eyes glassy. I think the mirror eats names. Before Elena could ask more, a tray clattered behind them, breaking the tension. The cafeteria burst back into noise and chatter. When she looked back, Agnes was gone. That night, Elena waited until the dorm was quiet. Her hands trembled under the blanket, but she knew she had to go back. She had questions now, and the mirror had answers. The hallway stretched long again, but this time it didn't feel empty. It watched her. The shadows curved just slightly inward, like the walls were breathing. She opened the door. The room was exactly as before, dark, heavy, still. Except now, there were two mirrors, identical, standing side by side. And in the left one, she saw herself. In the right, she saw something else. Same face, same eyes. But the expression was wrong. It smiled like it remembered something Elena hadn't lived yet. The reflection that watches back. Elena stared at the second mirror. The version of her inside it didn't blink. It didn't move when she did. It just watched. In the left mirror, Her reflection mirrored her every breath. But in the right, there was delay. Just a second. Barely noticeable, but it was enough. Enough to feel wrong. She raised her hand. The left mirror followed instantly. The right waited. Then followed, slightly out of sync, like it was deciding whether to obey. Elena, the right reflection said, but her mouth hadn't moved. She stumbled back. Both reflections remained still now. One calm, one smiling with the kind of grin that never reaches the eyes. "You're not me," Elena whispered. "No," the mirror replied. "You're almost me." Then the lights flickered. Once, twice. When they returned, something was written across the glass. Backward but clear. "Name what was taken." She stepped closer. "What do you mean?" "What name?" The right reflection tilted its head. "They told you it was Aeliana, but that was just a placeholder, a mask. What did your mother call you before the fire?" Aeliana froze. She had no memory of her mother, just vague warmth, shadows of lullabies. The fire that brought her to Whitmore had erased almost everything before it. She'd accepted that. But now, something was unraveling. Her head throbbed. Words rose in her throat, syllables she hadn't spoken in years. A name, maybe, but it burned to hold on to. The mirror pulsed again. The crack in the original mirror was wider now, branching like veins. Whispering began behind the glass. "Aeliana, Aeliana, Arlena." Each version twisted the sound slightly, like it was trying combinations, trying to fit a lock in her mind. Suddenly, the right mirror stepped forward. The glass didn't break. It bent, like a curtain pulled back, and her reflection, no longer hers, stepped out of the mirror. It looked exactly like her, same eyes, same hair, but the air shifted when it moved, heavier, cold. The thing smiled. "You brought me out," it said. Elena backed away. "What are you?" It didn't answer. It just looked at her, deeply, like it could see underneath her skin, through her thoughts, to the place where her true name was buried. Then it whispered, "Now we'll see who remembers first." The door behind her slammed shut. In the mirror, both of them went black. A name in the dark. The silence after the door slammed was total. Not heavy, not thick, empty. Elena turned, heart rattling against her ribs, but the door was gone. Not just closed, gone. In its place, a wall, seamless, smooth, like it had never been there. She was trapped inside a room with herself, but not herself. The doppelganger stood just a few feet away, head tilted slightly to the side, studying her with a gentle curiosity that made her skin crawl. "I've waited a long time," it said. "For me?" Elena asked. "For your mind to catch up," it replied. "They kept you asleep for so long. You were starting to forget you were ever real." Elena stepped back, reaching instinctively for the blank mirrors. Cold to the touch, solid again. "Who are you?" The double smile faded. It looked almost sad. "I'm the version of you that remembers, the one that wasn't stolen. I know the fire. I know the scream. I know what they did to you afterward. They scrubbed your name from the world." A memory stirred. Flames. Smoke curling around a doorway. A hand pulling hers away from something important. Then, darkness. Elena's voice cracked. "Why?" "To protect themselves," the double said. "Your name has power, not because it's yours, but because of what you were named after, and they couldn't let that wake up." "I don't understand." "You don't have to." It stepped closer now. "You just have to choose." Elena's back hit the mirror. "Choose what?" "To stay like this," it whispered. "Half asleep, forgotten, wearing someone else's name. Or It raised its hand. Take yourself back. From behind it, the mirror shimmered again, its surface rippling like black water. A vision flickered inside. A crib. A woman humming an old lullaby. A child looking into a mirror for the first time and whispering something that sounded too old to come from such a small mouth. The image vanished. Elena looked down at her own hands. Her skin felt tighter, like something underneath was pressing forward. I'm not ready, she whispered. You never were, the other her replied gently. But that never stopped you before. The lights in the room dimmed to almost nothing. And then, in the silence, voices began to echo. Hundreds. Whispers. Murmurs. All of them saying one thing. Say your name. Say your name. Say your name. Elena closed her eyes, and somewhere beneath everything, she remembered. But before she could speak it aloud, the double reached forward and touched her forehead. The room went completely black. The name you cannot forget. Elena woke with a start, gasping for air, her skin cold and slick with sweat. The darkness around her felt too thick. It pressed in on her, like the walls of the room had folded in. She wasn't sure if she had slept, or if she had just slipped into a different place entirely. Her hands trembled as she sat up. She could feel something, a presence, watching her from the shadows. Every corner of the room seemed to shift, the mirrors flickering at the edges of her vision, bending in unnatural ways. But the room wasn't just dark, it was alive. The air was heavy with something familiar. The whispers from before, they were still there, quiet but present, muted, like they were coming from a distance she couldn't reach. She stood, barely able to keep her balance, and looked around. The wall where the door had been was still smooth. No opening, no way out. And yet the feeling that there was something, someone waiting just beyond her reach made her chest tighten. She turned to the mirrors. The doppelganger wasn't there anymore. Instead, the mirrors reflected only the darkness, but the outlines of something moving inside them. Something that wasn't quite her, but too close to be separate. Suddenly, a low hum filled the room, coming from the mirrors. A pulse of energy, like the deep vibrations of a song she couldn't hear, but felt. Her head ached. Then the voice spoke. You're not alone. Elena froze. It wasn't the double. It wasn't the whispering from before. It was something new, something older, something that had been waiting for her to remember. Her heart stuttered. Who are you? She breathed. The hum grew louder. No answer. But Elena wasn't afraid, not like before. The fear was there, yes, but it wasn't the sharp kind. It was deeper now, like an old wound that never healed properly, just throbbed. Then from within the mirrors, the face appeared. Not the reflection of her, not the other her, but someone else entirely. A woman, but her features were indistinct, fading like shadows in moonlight. The only thing Elena could focus on was her eyes. So familiar. Those eyes, they belonged to her mother. Elena, the woman whispered, you were never meant to forget me. The words hung in the air. Mother. The name hit her like a forgotten song, a lullaby, a warm embrace from a time before fire, before pain. But the woman's face flickered, losing definition, and a deep, hollow voice, not her mother's, not even human, replaced the soft tone. Your name is not Elena. Elena stepped back, feeling her heartbeat quicken. Her chest tightened as the air shifted around her. The mirrors seemed to move now, stretching, opening. What is my name? She whispered. The question was like a fire in her throat, burning her from the inside. She needed the answer. She needed to remember. You were never supposed to know, the voice said. Who are you? Elena asked again, her voice shaking with frustration. A slow, cruel smile appeared on the woman's face, the smile Elena had seen before, the one in the other mirror, the one that wasn't hers. I am the one who watches, it said. The voice echoed, distorted. You don't remember because you weren't meant to. Suddenly everything snapped. The mirrors cracked, and the air exploded with sound. The woman's face twisted as the glass shattered, sending shards into the air. A dark wave of energy surged toward Elena, and she felt it pull at her, tugging her inside the broken mirror. No! She screamed. The room dissolved. The walls, the mirrors, the ceiling, all vanished into the blackness. And for the first time, Elena understood. She wasn't trapped in the mirror. She was the mirror. The reflection is you. Elena didn't know how much time passed. It felt like days, or maybe years, or just a single second. The blackness she had fallen into was not empty. It was thick, like liquid, pressing against her skin, filling her lungs, choking her. Her body hurt, like it was being pulled apart from the inside out. And yet she didn't scream. Her thoughts, her memories seemed fragmented. Glimpses of light, flashes of faces she should have known, and then nothing, just darkness. But in that blackness, she saw something, a shape, a figure. It wasn't human, not completely. It had a twisting, writhing form, like smoke, black smoke, shifting and folding over itself. And it whispered her name, Aeliana. Her mind snapped back into focus, and the pressure around her chest loosened. She could breathe again, but the air was thick, sticky. You were never Aeliana, the figure said, the voice low and cold, like it had traveled from miles below the earth. That name was a cover, a lie, a mask to keep you from seeing the truth. Stop, Aeliana gasped. I don't understand. Please. The figure moved closer, its form becoming clearer with every passing second. But it didn't have a face. Not really. Instead, it had eyes, dozens of them, all staring at her, unblinking. It's already too late to turn back, it said. The air around her began to shimmer, like the surface of water disturbed by a breeze, and in the shimmer, the mirror appeared, floating, glowing with a faint, unnatural light. It wasn't the mirror from before. It was different, larger, darker. The edges were sharp, glimmering like the teeth of some unseen beast. The reflection that stared back at her was not her own. It was her mother, numbered not exactly, but it was close. So close that it made her heart race with confusion and fear. The figure's voice echoed again, but this time it was almost pitying. You never asked. You never wanted to know what happened to her, to the one who named you. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Where is she? Where is my mother? The figure laughed, a sound like cracking glass. She is me. I am the one who made you. I am the one who gave you your name. And you are the mirror. Her hands trembled as she reached for the mirror. It was cold now, colder than she had ever imagined. The glass felt like ice, as if it had been waiting for her touch. As her fingers brushed the surface, the reflection of her mother began to fade, replaced by another image, another face, a man. No, it was her father, but there was something wrong about him too. His eyes were empty, hollow. His skin was pale and cracked, like dried clay, and his smile, it was too wide, too stretched. I've been waiting too, he whispered, his voice cracking through the glass. Waiting for you to remember. A sudden, overwhelming rush of memories flooded her mind. Not her own memories. Number, These were his, the ones that had been locked away, the ones that had been buried deep inside of her. She saw his face, the face of her real father, staring at her with hunger. She saw the fire. She saw the deal he had made. He had sold her soul. Her knees buckled. The mirror began to shatter around her, the pieces flying in every direction, each one filled with images of her life, of the life she thought she knew, of people she had loved, of promises that had never been kept. Her reflection fractured, splintering across the dark space around her, until she couldn't tell where the pieces ended and the void began. The figure stepped forward. You are not Aeliana anymore. You are what was left. The name was only the first lie. The truth is darker. You are the one who holds everything. The pieces, the memories, the souls. The mirror had never been a reflection. It had been a prison. She reached forward, shaking, but the pieces of the mirror, they pulled her in. She was falling again, this time not into darkness, but into something worse. The air was heavy around Aeliana as she fell through the shards of the mirror. Each fragment sparkled briefly before disappearing into the darkness that surrounded her. The moment she touched the cold surface, everything shifted. She had expected to break through, to escape, but now she was falling again. Deeper, farther, into a place that felt unfamiliar, yet unsettlingly intimate. The ground beneath her never appeared. The world was a black void, and the only thing she could feel was the weight of her own thoughts pressing against her skull, suffocating her. She had learned nothing yet. There were more questions than answers, and the longer she tumbled, the more lost she became. Her mind clung to the memory of her reflection, her mother's voice calling to her, warning her. But now those echoes felt distant, as if they were being drowned by a louder, darker voice from the shadows. Aeliana, she gasped, a sudden coldness rushing over her skin, and turned toward the sound. The voice wasn't the comforting tone of her mother. It was something worse. It was familiar, but not in a way that made her feel safe. "Who's there?" she shouted, her voice cracking. Out of the void, a shape began to form. First a blur, then a shadow. The figure was tall, its outline obscured in the dimness. But its eyes were the only thing visible. A pair of hollow, empty sockets staring directly at her. It wasn't human. "Aeliana," the voice repeated, now more insistent, more haunting. "You've been running long enough. It's time to stop." The figure stepped forward. It didn't walk. It drifted, gliding effortlessly through the void, as though it had always been part of the darkness. As it moved, the air around it seemed to twist and contort, creating strange patterns in the empty space. The more it came closer, the colder the air became. She backed away instinctively, her heart racing. But no matter how far she moved, the figure followed. Its gaze never wavered. It was as if the eyes themselves were pulling her in, pulling her closer to the truth that she didn't want to face. "No," Aeliana whispered, shaking her head. "I don't want to know." But it wasn't a choice. The figure stopped in front of her, its gaze locking onto hers. For a moment she saw nothing but darkness, felt nothing but an unbearable pressure on her chest. She gasped for air, struggling to breathe, but the sensation wasn't physical. It was something deeper, something primal. "You have to know," the figure whispered, its voice now a chorus of many, overlapping and indistinct. "Your name isn't Aeliana. That's just what they made you believe." The world around her seemed to collapse into a single point of light, then snap back to reality, pulling her violently out of the suffocating darkness. She found herself standing, no, floating, in front of the shattered mirror, the fractured pieces reflecting every version of herself she had ever seen. Some were young, others old. All were wrong in some way. None of them were real. Her heart pounded as the truth began to settle in. Her name wasn't Aeliana. The name that had been given to her, had been forced upon her, was a lie, a mask, a cover. No, she whispered, shaking her head again. It can't be true. The figure's shadowy form stepped forward again, its eyes widening with a mixture of pity and something darker, something cruel. It was watching her, waiting for her to understand. It is true, it said. You are the last of them, the one they could never erase, the one they thought they could bury. Elena's body went cold, her mind a swirl of confusion and fear. Who was she really? What had they done to her? How had they twisted her existence so completely that she couldn't even remember who she had been? You were born Aeliana, the figure continued, not Aeliana. The name they gave you was meant to keep you in the dark. But the truth will always find you, just as it found me. Her eyes widened in horror as the figure's form began to change. The darkness around it seemed to twist, coiling like tendrils, reaching toward her. The face that had been shadowy and formless began to take shape, becoming clearer, more defined with each passing second. It was her mother's face, but twisted, pale and drawn, the skin stretched too tight over the bones. Her eyes were empty, hollow, and her mouth, it moved, but no sound came out. Only the whispers of a voice she recognized, but never wanted to hear again. Aeliana. No, Aeliana. You've been running from the truth for so long, the figure crooned. But now, you must face it. Aeliana stumbled back, her legs weak. What truth? What are you talking about? The figure stepped closer, and as it did, Aeliana felt a deep, gnawing sensation at the back of her mind. She remembered something buried deep. She saw the fire, the flashes of light, the burning sensation on her skin. She saw the faces of people she didn't recognize, and heard names whispered in her ear, unfamiliar names that felt as though they should belong to her. You've always known, the figure said softly. Your true name was always with you, in the dark places, in the reflections you tried to forget. Aeliana, you were meant for this. No! Aeliana screamed, reaching out toward the shattered mirror. I don't want to be her. I don't want any of this. But the figure's smile grew wider, its hollow eyes glimmering with something dark. You don't get to choose anymore, it said. The name was never yours to reject. You belong to it, and it belongs to you. Elena's heart raced in her chest as the figure began to close the distance between them. She couldn't move. She couldn't escape. Her hands trembled, and she finally collapsed to her knees, clutching her head. The darkness pressed in on her, drowning out the world. But even as she trembled, a small part of her, the part that had always known, whispered the name, Aeliana. The mirrors around her seemed to pulse. A light flashed from within the broken pieces, growing brighter and brighter, until everything went black. The awakening. The world was silent. A deep, oppressive silence. Aeliana, or Aeliana she supposed now, was floating in the void, suspended in a place that felt detached from time and reality. The weight of the truth had settled into her chest, an unbearable burden. She could feel it, pressing against her ribs, suffocating her every breath. And yet, despite the darkness, despite the overwhelming sense of loss, there was something else now, a spark, It flickered faintly in the distance, a small, distant glimmer of light. It was nothing, just a speck in the vast emptiness. But Elena's heart felt it, a pull, like gravity, drawing her closer to it. Is this escape? She thought, her mind clouded with confusion. But as her body moved, shifting through the blackness, she realized something was wrong. The light was not pulling her in. She was being drawn toward it. And there on the edge of her awareness, a voice, her voice, but different, whispered to her. You are the key. Her pulse quickened. The voice was too close. It was like hearing the echo of her own thoughts, but distorted, darkened. You are the key, the voice repeated, more insistent now. It wasn't the voice of her mother, nor her father, but something far older, something ancient. Your true name was never meant to be remembered, but it is yours to wield. Her head snapped toward the voice. The light had grown brighter now, blinding her, yet it wasn't painful. Instead, it was inviting, pulling her in like a moth to the flame. It felt like freedom. It felt like the first breath of air after drowning. But there was something wrong with the light, something that twisted her very being. Elena. No, Aeliana, the voice murmured, the words dripping with an eerie sweetness. You have always been the one, the mirror-born, the one who was never meant to be free. Suddenly the light vanished. It wasn't like any light she had ever known. It didn't fade. It didn't blink out. It collapsed, folding in on itself, until she was left with a cold, inky void. But now she felt it. The change. The air around her had shifted. The heaviness that had weighed on her chest was gone. The suffocating grip of the darkness had loosened, and in its place was an overwhelming sense of power. She wasn't just floating anymore. She was standing. The world had returned, but it was different. She was still in the void, but it was no longer empty. She was standing in front of the shattered mirror once again. The shards had rearranged themselves, forming an intricate web of glass, each piece reflecting something different. But they weren't just reflections. No, these were memories, her memories, and not just her own. In the mirrors, she saw her mother. No, the woman who had once been her mother, standing in the center of a room, surrounded by symbols. The air was thick with the scent of incense, and shadows danced across the walls. The woman's face was pale, her eyes wide and empty. She was speaking, but the words were lost to Elena, echoing and warping, as though they had been spoken in a language she couldn't comprehend. The mirrors flickered and she saw more. Her father's face this time, twisted with fear. The same fear that had been buried deep within her for so long. The same fear that had driven her to run. The father she had never truly known. The one who had betrayed them all. And then she saw herself, Aeliana, not in the soft, familiar reflection she had always known, but as a stranger. Her face was older, colder, and yet somehow more alive. The woman in the mirror wasn't afraid. She wasn't running. She was waiting. The shadows in the mirror stirred, swirling as if alive. A single figure emerged from the darkness. It wasn't the reflection of herself. No, this figure was more twisted. Its face was obscured, but Elena could feel its presence, the overwhelming weight of its malice. Her heart pounded. I know you, the figure whispered, its voice like the rustling of dead leaves. I am the one who brought you here. I am the one who shaped you. And now you will join me. Elena stumbled backward, her breath quickening as the figure began to step out of the mirror. No, she gasped. I will never join you. The figure smiled, but it wasn't a smile of victory. It was a grin of something far more sinister. You already have, it said softly. You were never meant to escape. You were never meant to break the cycle. The walls of the mirror cracked, and a dark swirling mass began to pour from within, spilling into the air like ink. Elena's vision blurred as the room began to spin. She couldn't breathe. The weight of everything, the mirror, the truth, her name, was crashing down on her. And then she remembered her true name, Aeliana. She took a deep breath, the power of the name surging through her. For the first time, she felt alive. She wasn't just a reflection anymore. She wasn't just the mirror born. She was something more, something stronger. The darkness recoiled as if it could feel her power. The figure in the mirror shrieked, its voice a maddening wail of despair. But Aeliana, was no longer afraid. She was no longer the scared girl who had wandered into the shadows. She was the one who controlled them now. With a single step forward, the mirrors cracked open. The breaking point. Aeliana stood before the shattered mirror, her reflection now standing tall beside her. No longer just an image, but a presence, a part of her. The dark figure that had emerged from the glass, once so ominous, now recoiled in terror at the force she wielded. It was no longer in control. She was. The air around her crackled with tension, the space between the broken shards humming, as though the very fabric of reality was being torn apart. The figure, the thing that had been haunting her, manipulating her, now seemed so small, so insignificant in comparison to what Aeliana had become. She felt it, the surge of power. It was intoxicating, overwhelming, but she didn't allow herself to be consumed by it. Not yet. The figure hissed, its face contorted in a grotesque sneer. You think you can control this? You think you can break the curse? It laughed, its voice a low, mocking sound that echoed through the void. The curse isn't something you can just destroy. It's woven into your very soul, Aeliana. You are the curse. But Aeliana didn't flinch. Instead, she closed her eyes and the power within her surged again, a force that rippled through the broken mirrors, sending shards flying into the air like knives. With each breath, the space around her twisted, reshaped, and the dark figure's voice grew weaker, more distant. No! It gasped. You can't! But Aeliana was already moving. She stepped forward, crossing the threshold of the shattered mirror, and the darkness followed her. It was no longer a barrier, no longer a reflection. It was a door, a way to the truth she had been seeking. You were never meant to control me, Aeliana said softly, her voice calm, yet imbued with a power that resonated deep within the void. But I was always meant to control you. The figure recoiled, its form disintegrating as it tried to flee. But Aeliana's gaze caught it, holding it in place. The mirrors around them pulsed with energy, the reflections distorting, as if they too were trying to escape. You can't run from me anymore, she whispered, and with a flick of her wrist, the mirrors shattered, splintering into thousands of tiny fragments that scattered into the dark, vanishing into nothingness. The figure, now a wisp of shadow, began to unravel. The last remnants of its form twisted violently, but Aeliana wasn't afraid. She didn't need to be. She had control now. The name, her true name, coursed through her veins like fire, like lightning, and with each breath the darkness around her pushed back. You're nothing, she muttered, just a shadow, a fragment of something that was never real. The figure let out a final, desperate scream, but it was too late. Aeliana felt it, its essence, its hold on her, vanishing. And with that final flicker of resistance, the figure was gone. She stood alone. For a long moment, there was nothing. The void, the darkness, the shattered pieces of the mirror. They were all gone. The air was still, and the weight that had been crushing her chest had finally lifted. The power she had felt, the power she had become, still hummed in her, but it was no longer overwhelming. It was a part of her now, as natural as her own heartbeat. For the first time, Aeliana felt truly free, but that freedom came at a cost. She turned slowly, scanning the emptiness that surrounded her. She was no longer trapped in the void of the mirrors. She had crossed through it. She had broken through the barrier. But the world on the other side wasn't what she had expected. The landscape was barren, desolate. The ground was cracked and dry, and the sky above was a swirling mass of dark clouds. It was as though the very fabric of reality had been torn, leaving only fragments behind. And yet there was something here, something calling to her. Aeliana walked forward, her every step echoing in the empty space. She could feel it now, the presence that had always been there, watching her, guiding her. It wasn't a figure, it wasn't a shadow, it was the mirror itself. As she moved deeper into the desolation, she saw it, a structure in the distance, half-formed like a giant mirror embedded into the ground. It stood tall, gleaming in the faint light that pierced through the clouds. But it was not just a mirror, it was a door, a portal. Her heart raced as she approached it, the power inside her thrumming in sync with the energy of the mirror. This was where it had all started. This was where the curse had begun, and this was where it would finally end. But as she stepped closer, the air shifted. The ground trembled beneath her feet, and a low rumble filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. It's not over yet, Aeliana thought, a chill running down her spine. A crack appeared in the mirror's surface, and from it, a figure stepped out. It wasn't the dark figure from before, nor was it her mother or father. No, this was something different. This was older, ancient even. Its form shimmered in the reflection, its body shifting in and out of focus, as though it was not fully bound by reality. Its eyes glowed with a cold, burning light as it fixed its gaze on Aeliana. "You think you can escape?" the figure intoned, its voice deep and reverberating. "You cannot. You belong to the mirror. You always have." Aeliana took a step back, but her resolve didn't falter. The figure was powerful, yes, but she was no longer the person she had been when she first entered this cursed world. She was the mirror's true heir. She controlled this reality now. "I'm done being a pawn," Aeliana said, her voice steady, "and I will not let you control me any longer." The figure laughed, a sound that seemed to shake the very air. "You are still a part of this. You are still bound to it. The mirror has claimed you, Aeliana. You cannot escape what you are." Aeliana's eyes blazed with determination. "I am the mirror, and I'm done being its prisoner." With a wave of her hand, the air around the mirror cracked, the very space beginning to distort as she harnessed every ounce of power within her. The figure recoiled, its form flickering as if the very fabric of its existence was being torn apart. "You were never meant to control it," the figure sneered, but Aeliana wasn't listening anymore. The power surged through her, and she threw her hands forward, shattering the mirror completely. The world around her exploded into light. Rebirth. The world around Aeliana exploded into a bright, blinding light. Her entire body trembled as the shock wave of energy from the shattered mirror consumed her. She felt as though her very soul was being torn apart, like the fabric of reality was unraveling around her. For a moment there was nothing. No light, no darkness. Just a vast emptiness where time itself had ceased to exist. Then a whisper, a voice that was not her own, but felt strangely familiar, echoed in her mind. Do you think you can destroy what was never meant to be destroyed? It asked, soft and mocking. Do you think you can escape your true nature? Aeliana didn't respond. She couldn't. The words felt like cold fingers running down her spine, chilling her to the core. The voice seemed to seep into her very being, as though it was a part of her, lingering in the deepest corners of her mind. She tried to fight it. She tried to hold on to the power that had surged through her before, the power that had allowed her to break the mirror, to free herself from its grip. But as the voice continued to speak, she began to feel it slipping away. The power was diminishing. The world around her was becoming harder to grasp. The threads of reality beginning to twist, fold, and fray. Aeliana stumbled, her knees buckling beneath her. The light had vanished, and now she was in a dark, familiar place. It was a place she had been to before, a place she thought she had escaped. It was the very room where her journey had started, the room with the mirror, the room where her fate had been sealed. Her heart hammered in her chest as she realized the truth. She was back. The walls were cracked, the floor warped. Everything felt like it was decaying, as though time itself had stopped moving forward. The mirror, no, the portal, was standing in front of her, whole again, gleaming in the darkness. And through it, she saw them. Her parents, the ones who had bound her to this curse, the ones who had created the mirror, the ones who had stolen her identity. They were watching her, their faces cold and expressionless, as if they were waiting for her to return. Welcome back, Aeliana. Her mother's voice echoed, hollow and distant. Did you really think you could break free from what you were always meant to be? Aeliana's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to scream, to run, to fight back, but her body was paralyzed. The shadows from the mirror were creeping into the room, wrapping around her like a suffocating fog. No, Aeliana whispered, her voice weak, barely audible. This can't be real. It's not real. Her father stepped forward, his face gaunt and pale, his eyes empty of warmth. It is real, Aeliana. It always was. You were never meant to leave. You were always meant to return to the mirror. Aeliana could feel the weight of his words pressing down on her. She wanted to deny it, but deep down, she knew the truth. She wasn't free. She hadn't escaped. The mirror was not just a reflection of her. It was her. She had been part of it from the beginning. The voice that had whispered in her mind earlier returned, louder this time. The mirror has no end, Aeliana. It is your prison and your salvation. It is where you were born and where you will always return. Aeliana closed her eyes, fighting back the overwhelming sense of despair that was rising within her. She wouldn't give in. She had come too far, fought too hard. She wouldn't let the mirror claim her again. Enough, she shouted, her voice echoing through the room. I won't be your prisoner anymore. With a surge of strength, she pushed against the shadows that were closing in on her. The power within her, the power she had fought so hard to control, flared up once more. She felt it, the raw energy coursing through her veins, sparking from her fingertips. The mirror flickered, its surface rippling as if reacting to her defiance. Aeliana reached out, her hand trembling, but her resolve unwavering. I am not yours, she whispered, her voice steady. I am not Aeliana, and I am not Aeliana. I am me, and I will destroy this. The mirror screamed in agony, its surface warping and shattering under the force of her words. The shadows began to writhe and shriek, but Aeliana held firm. She would break free. She would finally sever the ties that had bound her for so long. Her power surged again, and this time it felt different. It wasn't just a force, it was her. It was the true part of her that had been buried beneath the lies, beneath the curse. And with that realization, she focused all of her energy into the mirror, into the dark force that had controlled her for so long. The mirror cracked, its surface splitting into countless pieces, each shard reflecting her face, every face she had worn. The cracks grew deeper, and the energy that had once held her captive began to unravel. And then, with a final burst of light, the mirror shattered completely. The room fell silent. Aeliana collapsed to her knees, her breath ragged, her body trembling. The weight of the curse had been lifted, but at what cost? She had broken the mirror. She had destroyed the source of her torment. But now she was alone in the aftermath. The room was empty. The shadows had disappeared. There was no sign of her parents, no sign of the darkness that had consumed her for so long. Aeliana slowly rose to her feet, looking around at the remnants of the broken mirror. The power within her was still there, but it had changed. It wasn't the overwhelming, suffocating force it had once been. It was a part of her now, her power, and for the first time, she truly understood what it meant to be free. But even as she stood there, the silence in the room felt heavier than ever. The darkness had been banished, yes, but Aeliana knew that something else was waiting for her. Something new. And no matter what came next, she would face it on her own terms. Because she was no longer bound by the mirror. She was no longer bound by anyone. The hollow rebirth, Aeliana, stood amidst the shattered remnants of the mirror, her body trembling but resolute. The air was thick with silence, and the weight of the past, everything she had once known, pressed down on her with an oppressive force. The power that had surged through her, that had shattered the mirror and freed her from its grasp, was now pulsing faintly in her veins. It was quiet now, no longer the overwhelming force that had nearly consumed her, but still there, silent, watching. She took a step forward, eyes scanning the empty room. The walls, once cracked and decaying, had become smooth, untouched. The air no longer felt heavy with dark energy, but was strangely still, as though the space was holding its breath. The echoes of her past, the echoes of the people she had known, lingered in the air, but they were distant, fading, as if their hold on her was weakening with every passing moment. The room, the mirror, the very essence of her torment had crumbled. She was free, or so it seemed, but there was something in the silence that gnawed at her, a hollowness that spread deep within her chest. The mirror had been broken, the curse undone, yet a void remained. Aeliana didn't know what was missing, only that something was. She exhaled slowly, trying to steady her breath. The air tasted cleaner now, but it was unnervingly empty. There was no warmth, no comfort. Where do I go from here? The question hung in the air, unanswered, as she continued to stand in the center of the room. Her gaze lingered on the shards of glass scattered across the floor. Each fragment reflected a different piece of her life, her fractured past, her fractured self. They glinted in the faint light, like distant stars from a universe she no longer recognized. For the first time, Aeliana allowed herself to fully confront what she had been through. She had been lost for so long in the reflection, the curse that bound her, the lives she was forced to live. But now she was something else. She was no longer a prisoner. She was no longer someone else's creation. She was herself, at last. But the question remained. What was she supposed to be now? Her eyes flicked to the broken mirror, and she stepped forward, her fingers brushing against the remnants of the glass. The sharp edges bit into her skin, but she didn't flinch. Her blood dripped onto the floor, and with it, a final piece of her past was offered up. And then, as if in response, the darkness returned. It wasn't the thick, suffocating darkness that had once imprisoned her. Number this time, it was different, lighter, thinner, almost as if it was a shadow of something else. Aeliana froze, her heartbeat quickening. The void was not gone. It never truly left. From the corner of the room, a faint whisper slithered into her mind. A voice, familiar yet unfamiliar, coiled around her thoughts like a serpent. It wasn't a voice of torment, but one of curiosity, one of calculation. "Do you think this is over?" Her body stiffened, her pulse racing. The voice seemed to come from everywhere, from the very air itself, from the spaces between her breaths. "You have broken the mirror, yes, but you are not free, not really." Aeliana gritted her teeth, every muscle in her body tensing. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice cold, steady. The remnants of her strength flickered like a flame, and she forced herself to face the presence that loomed just outside her vision. "Who am I?" The voice laughed, low and unsettling, reverberating in the stillness. "I am nothing and everything. I am the part of you that you cannot escape, the part that exists beyond the mirror, beyond the curse, beyond your own understanding. I am the one who will never let you go." The shadow that had been creeping at the edge of her vision now took shape. A figure, faint and misty, its form ever shifting, as if it couldn't decide if it should remain a shadow or become something more tangible. Aeliana's mind raced. This is it. This is the true source of the mirror's power, isn't it? You have broken the mirror, but that was just one form of me, one reflection of what was always meant to be. You think you are free because you destroyed something material, but I am not bound by glass. The voice hissed, its tone filled with malicious amusement. With a sudden rush, the figure solidified in front of her, its form like liquid darkness, shifting and twisting. Aeliana took a step back, instinctively reaching for the power within her. The force that had surged through her before pulsed again, thrumming in her veins, but this time it felt distant, less familiar. She didn't know if it would be enough. You cannot destroy what is already a part of you, the figure murmured. Its voice, though ethereal, was undeniable, like the echo of 1,000 forgotten voices. You have already joined me, Aeliana. Don't you see? We are one, and you cannot unmake yourself. Aeliana's chest tightened. No, this can't be true. I broke free. I am free. But as she stood there, the figure's presence grew heavier, suffocating. Its tendrils of shadow stretched toward her, curling around her wrists, her ankles, her throat. You think you have control, but you don't. I am the one who shapes your fate. You have been nothing more than a vessel for me, a reflection of what you wanted to be, but never truly were. The curse is not broken, Aeliana. It has merely shifted. Aeliana gasped, her hands trembling, but she refused to let the fear take root. She had already fought too hard to let this, whatever it was, define her again. With a surge of willpower, she reached deep inside herself, pulling on the strength she had gained. The power that was hers now, hers to command. I am more than you. I am more than this. The figure recoiled, its form writhing, but it didn't disappear. Instead, it began to merge with her, folding into her very being. She felt the tendrils of its essence sinking deep into her skin, the cold rush of its energy flooding her veins. And then, with a force that nearly knocked her off her feet, Aeliana screamed, a raw, primal cry that shattered the silence in the room. I am not your prisoner. The shadow recoiled again, and for the first time Aeliana felt it. The power. It surged up from within her, boiling through her body like fire, like the sun. It was everything. It was hers. She wasn't just fighting against the mirror anymore. She was fighting against herself, against the past, against the chains that had held her for so long. With a final earth-shattering scream, she thrust her hands forward, pushing against the darkness with everything she had. The figure screamed as the power in her exploded, shattering the last vestiges of the curse. The darkness was forced out, pulled from her like a toxic poison. And then there was silence. The shattered self, Aeliana, stood alone in the wreckage of the room, her breath coming in short, heavy gasps. The darkness had been pushed back, but she could still feel the lingering traces of it deep inside her, like a shadow she couldn't shake off. She had fought hard, fought against everything that had been trying to claim her for so long. But now, as the silence stretched around her, she realized something. The battle wasn't over. The mirror, the curse, the voice, none of it had truly left her. It had all been waiting, and now that she had broken free, the consequences of that freedom began to sink in. Aeliana closed her eyes for a moment, collecting herself. The air was still, too still. The power she had tapped into, the very force that had shattered the shadow within her, still buzzed beneath her skin. But it was not the same as before. It was different. It was hers, and yet it felt as though it was beginning to slip away from her control. She moved through the room, her feet making no sound on the smooth floor. The walls were no longer cracked, no longer decaying, but pristine, untouched, as though the room itself had been reborn with her. The light that filled the space was soft and gentle, but there was something unnatural about it, something that made her skin prickle with unease. She reached the place where the mirror had once stood, the broken shards now gone, leaving only an empty space. The power that had thrummed in the mirror had been absorbed into her, leaving behind nothing but the haunting echo of what it had been. Aeliana placed her hand on the cold surface where the mirror had once been, the weight of its absence pressing down on her. She had destroyed it, yes, but had she truly destroyed its influence over her? Or had she merely allowed herself to believe she was free? What if it was never the mirror that was the prison? Aeliana recoiled from the thought. The voice, the figure. They had told her she was more connected to it than she had realized, that she was never just a victim of the curse. She was a part of it. Her heart began to race, the cold fingers of doubt creeping into her mind. She had spent so long battling to escape the past, but now she couldn't help but wonder if it had been a part of her all along. The sound of footsteps echoed in the silence. Aeliana turned sharply, but there was no one there. She was alone. Yet the sensation of being watched grew stronger, as if something was lurking just beyond her reach. The silence grew oppressive, and in the stillness, her own voice sounded strange, distant, as though she wasn't the one speaking. "What do I do now?" she whispered, her words slipping from her mouth like a confession. Is there even a way out anymore? Before she could answer herself, the whispering began again. At first, it was a faint hum at the edges of her hearing, like the rustle of leaves in the wind or the soft murmur of a distant crowd. Then it grew louder, the voices growing clearer, more distinct. They were coming from inside her mind. We've always been here, Aeliana. Always. She gasped, her hand gripping the edge of the empty space where the mirror had been. The voices, her voices, whispered in unison, cold and comforting all at once. They were not alien to her. They were her own, speaking from the depths of her consciousness. She backed away from the space where the mirror once stood, eyes wide with terror. The room seemed to grow darker, the edges of her vision fading to black. Was this another trick? Another part of the curse that had never really left her? You cannot escape us, the voices cooed. You have always been ours. Your reflection, your truth. It is all us. Aeliana shook her head, denying the voices. No, you're wrong. I'm free. I broke the mirror. I am free. Her voice trembled, though, and she could feel her strength beginning to falter. But the voices only laughed. It wasn't a comforting sound. It was hollow, echoing, like 1,000 whispers scraping across her mind. You are free of the glass, Aeliana, they said, but you are not free of us. You never were. Aeliana stumbled back, the weight of the truth settling over her like a suffocating blanket. She wasn't free. She had broken the mirror, yes, but had she truly broken the cycle? The room began to shift. The floor seemed to ripple like water, the walls blurring in and out of focus. She reached out to steady herself, but nothing felt solid anymore. Everything was warping, distorting, bending into shapes that were not supposed to exist. You've always been here with us, the voices whispered, this time seeping into her thoughts, filling every corner of her mind. You've always been part of the reflection, part of the darkness, and you will always return to us. It's your fate. Aeliana clutched her head, the overwhelming pressure of the voices pushing her to the edge of her sanity. No matter how hard she fought, the voices refused to leave. They were within her now, a part of her, a shadow that would never fade. No, she gasped, her breath quickening. No, I won't be part of you. I won't. But as she screamed the words, she felt the darkness begin to settle, not just around her, but inside her. She could feel it, deep within her chest, a coldness that spread through her like a poison. For the first time she understood. The mirror was never just a reflection. It was a connection, a link to something far darker, something more powerful than she had ever realized. And it had always been a part of her. The question was no longer if she could escape the mirror. The question was whether she could survive herself. The abyss within. Aeliana's body trembled as the dark whispers clawed at her mind, their voices growing louder with each passing second. She had fought so hard to break free of the mirror, to escape its cruel grasp, but now it seemed she had never truly escaped it. The darkness that had once been trapped in glass was now woven into her very soul. She could feel it like a weight inside her, pulling her deeper into the abyss. The room continued to shift, bending and warping in unnatural ways. It felt as though the very fabric of reality was unraveling around her, the edges of the walls bleeding into the darkness. She tried to steady herself, to ground herself in something solid, but there was nothing. There was only the void. And then the voices returned, louder and more insistent. You cannot escape us, Aeliana, they crooned. their words echoing in her mind. You are nothing without us. You are our reflection, our creation. Without us, you are lost. Her heart raced, panic flooding her veins as the darkness pressed closer, seeping into her very being. She could feel it, the mirror's power, pulsing within her like a dark heartbeat. The more she fought it, the stronger it seemed to grow. No! Aeliana gasped, her voice barely a whisper against the weight of the voices. I won't let you take me again. I won't be your prisoner. But as the words left her lips, she felt something shift deep within her chest. It was subtle at first, a flutter, a movement that was almost imperceptible, and then it exploded, an overwhelming surge of power that twisted through her veins like fire, searing her from the inside out. Her body arched, her hands clenched into fists as the raw energy erupted within her, flooding every inch of her being. She felt herself being torn apart by the force of it, but it wasn't the darkness that consumed her. It was something else, something ancient, something primal. For the first time since she had begun her journey, Aeliana understood. The mirror, the curse, the darkness. It had all been a part of her, but so too was this power. This force that now surged through her veins was hers, born from her, just as the shadow had been. And with that understanding came a choice. You are nothing without us, the voices repeated, their tone rising in pitch, their words twisting like a knife in her mind. You cannot fight what you are. Aeliana's breath came in sharp gasps as the energy within her surged again. She could feel the darkness, its grip tightening around her heart, its cold fingers reaching for her very soul. But she wasn't afraid. She couldn't be. No, she whispered, her voice growing stronger, more certain. I am not you. I am not the reflection you made me. With that, she threw her arms wide, summoning the power within her, the fire that had always been there, hidden beneath the layers of the curse. The shadows recoiled, pulling back in fear, but Aeliana wasn't done. She could feel their presence, pressing in on her, their whispers trying to drown her out, but she wouldn't let them. I am more than you, she said, her voice now a declaration. I am the one who will control this power. I will control my own fate. The shadows screamed, their voices becoming a cacophony of rage. But Aeliana didn't waver. She could feel the mirror's influence, the darkness, all of it. But she knew now, it had always been a part of her, and now she could wield it. Her eyes burned with fierce determination as the power within her surged one final time, exploding outward in a blinding wave of light. The darkness shrieked in fury, but it was no match for the force that Aeliana had unlocked within herself. The room, the walls, the very space around her shattered in an instant, crumbling to dust as the light filled every corner. The voices faded, their presence finally dissipating, vanishing into nothingness. And then there was silence. Aeliana stood amidst the remnants of the broken world, her chest heaving with the effort. But she was no longer trembling. She had done it. She had reclaimed herself. The mirror was gone, the curse broken, and the darkness. The darkness was no more. But even as the silence enveloped her, she knew this was only the beginning. There was still more to do. The power she had unlocked, the strength she had discovered, it was hers to command now. She could feel it thrumming beneath her skin, a steady pulse that reminded her of the battle she had fought, and the one that still lay ahead. She wasn't just a reflection anymore. She was the creator of her own destiny. With a deep breath, Aeliana took the first step forward, the world around her stretching into new possibilities. Whatever came next, she was ready, because for the first time in her life, she was truly free. The final reflection. Aeliana stood alone in the ruins of the world she had once known. The silence was suffocating, yet there was a strange peace to it. She had broken free from the mirror. She had freed herself from its haunting grasp. But as she looked around, she realized that freedom wasn't as simple as it had seemed. The shadows no longer pressed against her, but they were still there, lingering in the corners of her mind. She could feel them, just beneath the surface, waiting for a moment of weakness. They had been a part of her, a reflection of her, and though they were no longer an active force in the world around her, they would never truly leave her. Aeliana closed her eyes and exhaled slowly, pushing the doubts from her mind. She had done what no one else had ever managed. She had faced the mirror, faced herself, and won. But in the distance, the whispering began again. It wasn't the dark voice from before, the one that had tried to claim her, but something else, something far older, far more insidious, a voice she had almost forgotten, a voice that sent a chill down her spine. "You think you are free, Aeliana?" It hissed, like the rustling of leaves in a windless forest. "But you cannot outrun your own reflection. The mirror was never the prison. You were the prison." Aeliana's heart skipped a beat. She turned, searching the emptiness, but saw nothing. The voice was not coming from any physical place. It was in her head. The whisper was inside her. "I am you," the voice whispered again, more insistent this time. "And you are me. You have always been a prisoner of your own reflection, and you always will be." The weight of those words crushed down on her. She had thought that by destroying the mirror, she had destroyed the curse. But now it seemed the mirror had only been a symbol. The real chains were the ones she had forged herself. Aeliana's hands trembled, but she steadied herself. She wouldn't let it take her again. She was not that person anymore. She had broken the cycle once, and she could do it again. But as she tried to focus, something began to stir within her, something dark. The shadows that had been lingering now began to take form, swirling around her, forming shapes that resembled her, yet were twisted, contorted in ways that were not natural. She closed her eyes, fighting the wave of fear that threatened to swallow her whole. "I am not you," she whispered, her voice firm. "I am not the reflection you want me to be." The shadows paused as if considering her words, and then they began to pulse, growing larger, more defined, as if they were feeding off her fear, off her doubt. And then, in an instant, they lunged at her. The return of the mirror. Aeliana barely had time to react. The shadows engulfed her, wrapping around her, pulling her into an inescapable grip. She fought, struggling to break free. But the more she fought, the stronger their hold became. It was as if she had never truly escaped them, as if the reflection she had feared for so long was once again consuming her. Her vision blurred, and she felt herself falling into the very heart of the darkness she had spent so long trying to escape. But then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the pressure lifted. The shadows retreated, and Aeliana found herself standing in front of something she never thought she would see again. The mirror. It stood before her, whole, unbroken. It gleamed in the dim light, its surface reflecting her image. But there was something different about it. This time, the reflection staring back at her was not just her. It was everything she had been, everything she had fought to escape. Aeliana felt her breath catch in her throat. Her heart raced as she stepped forward, drawn to the mirror, but not in fear. This time it was different. The mirror no longer controlled her. She had faced it before and broken it. But now she could feel the truth. The mirror had not been the cause of her suffering. She had been. The reflection that stared back at her was no longer just an image. It was a part of her, a reflection of the darkness she had carried within. The same fear, the same self-doubt that had driven her to the mirror in the first place. But now Aeliana realized the truth. The mirror had always been a tool. It was never the power itself. The real power lay in her. With trembling hands, Aeliana reached out to touch the glass. The moment her fingers brushed against it, the world around her shifted. The room began to dissolve. The walls, the floor, the very air around her fading into nothingness. And then, in the blink of an eye, she was no longer in the room. She was standing in a vast, infinite space. The mirror was gone, replaced by nothing but darkness, an abyss that stretched on forever. Aeliana looked around, but there was no way to tell where the edges of this place were, no way to understand what it was. But then the voice returned, that voice, the one that had whispered in her ear from the very beginning. "You thought you had escaped, Aeliana," it said, its tone cold and devoid of emotion. "But this is your true prison. You have always been here. You are nothing more than a shadow in the mirror." Aeliana felt her breath catch in her chest. This was it, the final test. The reflection had always been a part of her. The mirror had never been the source of her torment. It had always been the fear inside her, the darkness she had tried to deny. "No," Aeliana whispered, her voice shaking but determined. "I am not just a shadow. I am not just a reflection. I am me." The voice laughed, a hollow, empty sound that echoed through the darkness. "Then prove it," it taunted. And with that, Aeliana stepped forward into the void, her mind racing, her heart filled with resolve. She would prove it. She would face the darkness, the reflection, and finally break free.